All right, I will call to order tonight's meeting. It is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025, 6 p.m. We are here this evening in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library. We are not on Zoom. We are not being live streamed, but we will be recorded for future YouTube posting after the session tomorrow. Before we get started, can we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alright, so tonight we are interviewing 2 of 3 candidates. We have information before us, and this is a reminder for the board from our meeting on Monday. Write down whatever follow-up questions you might have. We'll save those for the end if we have time. We are limited to about 45 minutes per candidate, so I'm gonna do what I can to make sure we keep things moving to get through all of the questions. And we'll see where things are at the end of the night.
He's here, so whenever you're ready. You guys want a few more minutes, or?
Does the board have any questions or
Who's first?
to get started?
Oh, Angie's first?
No, Nelson.
Nelson's on the.
Oh.
I apologize, sorry.
Perfect.
Yep,
Okay,
never mind.
all right. I'll bring him in.
We technically have him on the schedule for 6:15.
Do you wanna wait?
If people are expected to get here at 6:15 to be present for it, well, just Pete, some people are, yes.
No, I mean, he's out for a second.
No, I know, I'm just,
Yeah.
Okay.
If the public wants to be here by
you know what I mean,
by
like,
6:15.
I don't know how strict we need to be, just pointing that out, doesn't-
Technically speaking, it's not a public hearing, so you could start it early, so it would be at the board's discretion if you wanted to wait till 6:15 or start a little bit early.
Does the
Be
board
okay
have
either way.
any preference?
Since this is not being live videoed, people are expecting at 6:15. They won't be watching it on live because it's not there, so I don't know if being 6:15, we would expect people to come in at 6:15 right
wait.
before our start. That's the only, so the townspeople can come if they want,
So do you want me to hold off?
rather than walking in the middle.
Madam Chair, Nelson Boyd,
Yeah.
right here.
Hello,
Good.
Hi guys. Oh, I guess I'll shake everyone.
Jen Ledger, Chair,
to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Good evening. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Leah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Harry, second, how do you pronounce your last
Moy.
Moy?
Yeah.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Same here.
Alex, nice to meet you.
Hi, Nelson, Tamika.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Right, welcome, thank you for being here, we appreciate your time.
Of course, thank you, Jen. Nice to meet you, everyone.
I think we will, just in the interest of time, make sure we have enough time to go through all the questions. We'll just jump right into them if you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We have a series of questions, we'll just go through the board and ask those questions and of course give you your time to respond.
Okay.
So first question, for us, describe your management style and how will you create a culture of professionalism and ensure accountability, but yet without micromanaging?
So I would say my management style is to leave it to the department heads who are, the subject matter experts to, run the day-to-day operations of the departments. You mentioned micromanaging. I'm not really one to do that. I certainly don't have the skill set to do it, but more importantly, that's really not my style. I tend to like people to, operate their departments as they see fit. And then, if there's any issues or concerns that, that I, might see things that need to be tweaked, I'll certainly bring it up in a very collaborative way. Or, if I hear something through the grapevine that, things, complaints or problems with service, I'll bring up to the department heads and then we'll, have a conversation and, go from there. In terms of making sure everyone is, held accountable and, being professional. I'm all about public service, so, we are, every department is, very front-facing in certain ways, so I think you have to really approach, the public in a very calm, professional manner. There may be situations where you're foisted into a situation where tensions are high, things are heated, but I think it's, as a public servant, we have to be the ones to, have a calm and collected, demeanor, no matter sort of what's being thrown at us. So, customer service is very important to me, so I think even if the person you're speaking to might be unreasonable or, they're simply don't have the right information, I think we need to diffuse those situations and try our best to just, provide the best service that we can to, the public and our constituents.
Okay. Pardon me, how do you plan to communicate with the board as individuals and as a whole? What tools do you use to communicate? How do you build trust with the board where members have differing opinions?
So currently I serve a 3-member board, so I say this quite a bit. I'm used to having the same conversation 3 or 4 times because, we don't want to violate any open meeting law, laws. So, I'm just used to having the same conversation 3 times, with each individual board member. I'm just there to present sort of the facts, There might be times where my opinions is interspersed with that, but, I'm really there to provide the facts to each select board member, and it's up to them to make a, informed decision. There are times where, I think decisions are not unanimous. I would certainly like most motions or votes to be, 3-0, or in this case 5-0, or, at most 4-1. When you get to those 3-2 situations, I feel like maybe I haven't done my job properly of presenting the facts. As much as I agree that people have differences of opinion, I think most of the times I would strive to really get a unanimous decision from select board members on any given scenario that I'm presenting to them.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Can you please rate your financial management and budget skills on a scale of 1 to 5 and tell us why you gave us this rating?
Throughout my municipal career, I'm coming up on 11 years now, so basically starting my 2nd decade in public service. It's always been in the budgeting and finance arena. So if I had to rate myself, it'd probably be probably about a 4.5. And the reason for that is I'm used to dealing with not only operating budgets, on a year-to-year basis, so I'm monitoring the operating budget very closely throughout the fiscal year, but I also have strong capital budgeting skills as well. My experience runs anywhere between 5 and 10 year lookouts for capital budgets. Certainly, it's very difficult at times forecasting capital budgets nowadays with equipment expenses skyrocketing. I wish I had a crystal ball to let me know, how much equipment's going to cost, 3 years down the road. But it's anyone's guess at this point. I come from a public works background, and I know for a fact that vehicles are, seeing double-digit increases and also seeing, multiple year lead times. So I would say, between my, operating budget experience and my capital budgeting forecasting skills, I would rate myself about a 4.5.
Thank you.
Just waiting for you.
Oh,
He's all set, so
Oh, you were writing something. I
oh no, I was just taking notes, sorry.
Okay, I didn't You've had varied positions, and in as such, could you tell us about a time when you had to make difficult budget and staffing decisions?
So in Townsend, we tried to pass an override basically 3 times this past fiscal year. Every time we whittled down the number to a more, I guess, palatable number, and every time we did that, we actually made sacrifices and cuts. So we actually ended up, we didn't get rid of trash, but we turned it into an enterprise fund, so it's no longer in the general fund. So that took care of some expenses. The final override that we faced was all for personnel, salaries and wages, about $250,000. That unfortunately didn't pass as well. So some of the choices that we had to make were not filling very key vacancies, like in highway, in the police department, were delaying the hiring of a cadet, as well as some fire staff. And then I would say more importantly, for some of the cuts that affected actual folks, we ended up not giving a step increase in COLA for our non-union folks. And as for myself, I volunteered to actually not take a pay increase for the year. So that amounted to about $5,000 for me. And, you know, I did that without being asked or prompted. I just felt like, being the town administrator, you know, I should lead by example and, you know, make a sacrifice. Literally in our budget, my salary is the very first line in the budget, like very, very top. So I felt like I just had to lead by example, and, you know, I just, you know, decided to forego a step increase that was, you know, per my contract, just to help with the budget.
Describe your experience and responsibilities working within a regional school district.
So in Townsend, we are part of a 3-town school district. We have Ashby and Townsend that are part of the 3 school district, North Middlesex. And, you know, it's interesting working in this environment. As long as 2 out of the 3 towns vote for the school budget, the 3rd town, whether they, you know, agree with it or not, have to accept, you know, the assessment that's given to that community. So, you know, I guess that means, you know, our fate isn't really in our hands, so to speak. You know, we're reliant on 2 other towns to either, you know, push back or, you know, accept the assessment that was given to us. So that can be very challenging at times. I certainly work well with the TAs in Ashby and Pepperell. We're always in communications about how to regionalize or collaborate on, you know, various initiatives. But yeah, I definitely have experience working with a regional school district, and we also have monthly meetings with the superintendent during budget season, just to see how the numbers are looking like for the upcoming fiscal year.
What experience have you had with shared services or partnerships with other municipalities, and have you had, and what challenges and other opportunities to these shared services?
So I mentioned earlier, you know, I communicate pretty regularly with the Ashby and Pepperell TAs, and we're always trying to find ways of collaborating. You know, recently we had our land use coordinator, which is our town planner, leave. And so I reached out to Pepperell saying, you know, does your town planner have any bandwidth to maybe take on some of the responsibilities? Another example was, what was it? Pepperell recently lost their HR coordinator. So, he reached out to me, seeing if there were any opportunities for collaboration. Unfortunately, nothing came about from it, with those conversations, but right now we are actively talking, to potentially regionalize fire and EMS, and we're looking at 5 to 7 different towns in the area. So, being a small community, I think collaborating and regionalizing is really one of the core ways we can maybe save some money, use economies of scale to sort of better utilize our resources. Folks like Townsend or Rutland, with only 9,000 people, you can't be sort of in a vacuum or a silo. You need to collaborate with your neighboring communities.
Pardon me. What is your approach to managing conflicting priorities among staff and across departments and within the select board?
Yeah, I think for departments, I think a lot of the issue stems from a lot of departments being very siloed. They don't talk to each other. There's not a lot of collaboration going on. I feel like when you get all the department heads in the room, and I think the regular department head meetings are very critical to maybe getting some of those communications out there. Like I said, a lot of departments are very siloed. They have no idea what other departments are doing. But I think when you get everyone in a room just talking, telling everyone what's going on in their departments, I find you'll see a lot of great ideas that come from it. It's like, oh, I didn't think about that, or, thank you for letting me know. Why don't we, work on it offline, or, other helpful suggestions. In terms of the select board, that's tough. I've worked with folks that are, very much on this side of the spectrum versus the other, and you're trying to get them all to maybe come into the middle. And I think that's where I come in, where, as I mentioned before, I'm just there to present the facts. Maybe have, a certain idea of how I feel we should be approaching this issue. And I'm hoping ultimately, everyone, just meets sort of in the middle, or at least backs off from their initial position, to come to some sort of compromise.
Thank you. Can you please describe your role and/or experience in human resources and collective bargaining?
So human resources, I've dealt a little with FMLA, sick leave request, some benefit enrollment stuff, certainly when it's open enrollment around the March, April, May timeframe, that's usually when it's the busiest. Onboarding, offboarding, employees, I have some experience with that as well. But collective bargaining, I would say that's probably an area where I have the most experience in. Most towns I've worked in, it's a very union-heavy environment, so you have anywhere between 3 to 5 union contracts, and they're all very different. Coming from the public works side, I'm quite familiar with DPW contracts. They can be a little bit more complicated than, say, a clerical contract, because in public works, you have stipends, allowances, different overtime rules, seniority, and things like that you might not really see in something like a clerical union. So I think the DPW highway contracts are typically a little bit more complicated. In my time in Townsend, I've already started negotiating on the current police union contract. We had to go to the collective bargaining table with the overrides that I mentioned. They were able to negotiate none of the reductions coming from their union staff, but that required during the summer for 3 unions to come to the collective bargaining table with the town. So I would say I have a pretty good amount of collective bargaining experience, reading contracts, understanding them, pulling them out every so often, with certain situations. Because a good contract will pretty much answer any weird situations you might deal with, at least in theory. So that's when you pull out the contract and take a look at those certain sections.
Thank you.
We have done a social media internet search. What did we find that you feel you want to comment on or explain?
Luckily, I don't think I have much of a social media presence, at least for my professional career. I've pretty much stayed under the radar. I haven't gotten into any trouble or any issues or gotten anyone so upset that they're saying stuff about me on social media. At least I don't think so. I don't really follow some of the social media pages. Those aren't really searchable anyways. But certainly if you Google me, I don't think you actually would have found anything, because I don't think there is anything bad out there with my name under it.
What do you see as the key challenges and opportunities for Rutland over the next 5 years, and how would you address them?
Budgeting is sort of my field of expertise, and I feel like Rutland, it's great that you guys got that override a couple years ago. That really kind of helped right the ship, so to speak. But I'm looking at your 5-year forecast, and you guys are expecting some pretty significant, deficits over the next several years. And, it's tough. Rutland is kind of a more rural town, so a lot of folks don't want to see, crazy new developments or some, commercial being developed. So you guys want to keep that feel, so you don't want to grow yourselves out of the financial problems you have. But a lot of these issues, are kind of out of our control. You have a school budget that's just like in Townsend, 60% of the budget, and you really don't have much of a say in it. It's really the school committee that develops those budgets. You have things like health insurance and property liability insurance and your regional retirement system that you're putting money into. And those are seeing 5 to 8 to 10% increases. Health insurance is like 15-20%. Those are things that you simply can't, not have. So when you look at the pie and you take out the schools and insurance and some other factors, you're only left with a very small piece of the pie that you actually have control over. So I think what Rutland and a lot of communities need to do is making some pretty painful choices. I'm certainly not going to advocate for laying off a firefighter or a police officer, or closing down town hall an extra day, or the library or the senior center. But I think the select board in the coming years might need to really look at those tough decisions and make those tough decisions in order to have a balanced budget. After you guys had a $2 million override, I don't think your community has an appetite for another one. So since you can't grow out of the problem, and a lot of these budgetary issues is out of your control, I think the select board is probably gonna have to make some tough choices, in the next few years.
Right, we will certainly have time for some follow-up questions, but before we do that, do you mind just giving us a 2-minute closing statement on why you should be selected for the position?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my experience in Townsend, it's very similar to sort of Rutland's demographics, certainly, the population is about the same, 9,000, 9,500 people. We have a similar sized budget. Townsend's currently about $27.5 million. You guys are just over 30 million. You guys have a regional school district, and we also have so does Townsend, and we also have a vocational school as well. So, and I know you guys have one as well, Bay Path, I believe it's called. So I think with my strong budgeting and finance background, and having gone through, override after override and, having to make some tough decisions, I think I've kind of acquired, the skill set and experience necessary that I think, I can use those skills here in Rutland, as well as, continue growing, with more experience. But I feel like when you add that all up together, I think I would be a very really good candidate for the, town administrator position here in Rutland.
Open it up to the board for any follow-up questions you'd like to ask.
Sure, I'll start. You mentioned that there was an override that your current town went for recently. In your opinion, why do you think that didn't pass?
Townsend, unfortunately hasn't passed an override in the last 18 or 19 years. So that's basically 2 decades of not passing any sort of override. Townsend does have a aging population, and the senior citizens are on a pretty fixed income, so I totally understand why they would be reluctant to vote for an override. Because voting for an override doesn't mean a year or 2 or 3 years from now you don't need another one. So I think given the economic environment we're in right now, a lot of folks are just very hesitant to do so. I felt like we explained as best as we could. I certainly don't want to use scare tactics or weaponize certain things. I don't want to say, if you don't vote for this override, it's going to take twice as long to get to you, if there's a fire or a medical emergency. I don't want to use those scare tactics, to get people to vote for an override. I just want to present to them sort of the facts and let them make the decision. But Townsend's just a very unique town. Just very not very receptive to overrides. So I'm not sure what more we could have done, except maybe a little bit more public outreach. But I feel like we had a public forum. We spoke about it. At the town meeting. Certainly the select board have talked about it. Quite extensively. So. I'm just not sure what more we could have done in that situation. Sometimes you're dealt that hand and you just have to, work with what you have.
How do you feel about economic activities? In other words, okay, can we better our business? How the town goes about attracting businesses?
As I mentioned before, I feel like, Rutland's one of those communities that doesn't necessarily want to change the character of the town. But, with growth comes revenue, and, that could solve some budgetary issues that the town would have. I think what you guys could possibly do is I wouldn't call it more business friendly, but certainly if, you know, a new business or development were to come across, say, the planning board, for example, or the select board, you know, maybe less barriers of entry. I also feel like the infrastructure is very important. Coming from a public works background, you know, the roads are very important, I think, to attracting, you know, business, but more importantly, you know, water and sewer, you know. You know, a lot of businesses, you know, won't, or commercial won't come into certain communities unless there's that infrastructure in place. I've seen that time and time again, or they wanna come, but the fee to connect to the system is so astronomical that, you know, they don't wanna do it, so maybe that's something you guys can certainly explore. You know, target certain areas to maybe get more infrastructure in there, as well as, you know, looking at, you know, some of the fees involved to, you know, connecting with the current system that you have.
Thank you. In your financial management and budget skills, how do you see, other than working with the bylaws, we have a finance committee. How do you see your role in creating a budget in working with the finance committee?
I certainly want the finance committee to sort of be on board with the budget that's being presented, so I think having the finance committee hear directly from the department heads and their budgets is very important. I feel like if you can get buy-in from the finance committee, then that would go a long way to, you know, presenting a united front, so to speak, you know, at town meeting when the budget's being presented. The last thing we want is, you know, either the select board or the finance committee to not be in favor of a certain warrant article. Certainly the budget, you would want both groups to be, you know, looking at it favorably. So I think having department heads meeting with you know, with the finance committee during budget season, and, you know, sort of, I wouldn't call it defending their budget, but certainly explaining why, you know, your department's budget should, you know, be this way for the next fiscal year. And if, you know, there's room for, you know, discussion or collaboration or maybe even compromise, I think that's really the time, you know, for those things to happen.
Okay.
With regards to your communication with the departments, you said you leave a lot of the day-to-day to the departments and just you think critical, the department head meeting, regular department head meetings are critical just for keeping those lines of communication open, that they're good for generating ideas. How do you go about implementing ideas or seeing ideas or concerns that are brought up in those meetings? How do you go about making change to try and address some of those concerns or implementing ideas, and how do you get buy-in from staff that maybe are not as welcoming of change?
Yep. So in situations like that, you know, if there is an issue or concern that, you know, I see, I think involving the department head is certainly, you know, pretty obvious, but I think you also need to look around to maybe the, you know, the orbiting, you know, departments that might have some, you know, either some, what's the word, some assistance or maybe even some, you know, discussion. So, for example, if it's like if it's something in the highway department that I see is wrong, maybe I would involve facilities or maybe even the water department, for example. So I would, in situations like that, basically I would add more people to the discussion, not just focus directly with the department itself, because I feel like there's always at least one or two departments, or maybe even a staff member not in that department itself, that can bring forth, some very, crucial ideas or a point of view that, that we're simply not seeing, Each department has, I guess, a very myopic view of how they, see, how things should be done. So I think, when you add a couple more people offline and then you bring everyone together, I think at that point, you're really, a lot of really good ideas come from that sort of collaboration.
Following on that somewhat, I'm curious to know how you feel about meeting with department heads en masse and kind of a give and take session with them to find out what they're thinking and they can hear what you have to say and free exchange of ideas.
Yeah, I think, during those meetings, there are a lot of ideas being exchanged. And I think if there's some that, merit further discussion, we can take that offline, add a few more folks to the mix. And, form like, impromptu, almost like subcommittees, if you want to call it that. It's certainly not anywhere as official as a subcommittee, but I think once you have that big group meeting, you then start breaking off into smaller groups, to really dive into the issues. And I think once you do that, I think you'll find, you'll be a lot more successful than just, working with one department in particular.
Very good, thank you.
In regards to HR, how do you go about offering praise and discipline among employees? What's your style?
I think with praise, I'm always appreciative of all my staff and all the hard work they put in. Every time I interact with them, I'm, in the end, I typically, thank them for, either a job well done or thank them for, letting me be part of that discussion. And, I also thank them for the contributions they make as well, for that particular issue. In terms of discipline, I really like to try to say yes most of the time. I'm really not a no person. So when I say no, that typically means, there's a hard line of, what is acceptable and what isn't. And in terms of discipline, I think, I'm a firm believer in progressive discipline. I think talking to the individual in the beginning is a good first step. I think if the bad behavior or something that they're doing persists, that's when I think I need to escalate it more to something more formal, typically written, so that there's a track record of it in case further discipline needs to take place. And and if that doesn't work, then I think HR or the select board would need to be involved to correct, situations like that. But, certainly, in a union-heavy environment, you kind of have to follow what the collective bargaining contract says. It's typically also, progressive discipline. Typically it's a verbal, and then it could be anywhere between 1 and 3 written, corrections, and then after that, there's like hearings and things like that, or grievances. So that can be very, it could be very time consuming before you finally get the result that you need. But I would say that's how I would handle disciplinary issues like that.
A bit of time, right? A lot of your background is in finance. What would you say is your favorite part of transitioning from finance to more of a administrator leadership role in total, and your least favorite part of it?
I've actually thought about that quite a bit because I'll start with what I like. What I like is I get to see how each department runs. You know, maybe not at the day-to-day, minutia, detailed level, but being in public works for most of my career, I was kind of very focused on, public works, maybe some ancillary, departments. But now being a town administrator, I can maybe see, peer into, each department and learn about things that I didn't really know about. Planning and conservation was something I knew very little about, but ever since being a town administrator, I come to really appreciate sort of the work that goes into, planning and conservation and, the zoning board of appeals and sort of how they, interact with the town. So that's a really favorite part of, since becoming a town administrator, is learning the ins and outs and, how a department operates. My least favorite is kind of in the same vein, but flipped around. I'm at a very high level. I'm used to like boots on the ground, like working, minute by minute, hour to hour with, staff, operational staff, dealing with, a vendor or, a payroll issue, an invoice issue. So, I'm really like in the weeds, really boots on the ground at that point. And I really miss that because I feel like I have a really good pulse on that particular department or area. But I feel like I'm losing that. I simply don't have the bandwidth to, get that deep with every department. I would love to, but, unfortunately I can't. So in a lot of ways, that's probably my least favorite is, I'm not really involved with a lot of the day-to-day, operational details that I sort of been grown accustomed to.
I'm gonna go back to a little bit of the collective bargaining talk. You said you've got a lot of experience there. You made reference to contracts, just depending on which contract it is, how they vary, between stipends or offerings, things along those lines. How and then earlier when you were talking about difficult budget decisions and having to make salary and wage cuts and no step in COLAs for staff.
Yep.
So between difficult decisions and contracts, union contracts, or just contracted staff, how do you ensure equity among non-contracted staff or non-union staff so that they're not constantly the ones that seem to be bearing the brunt of some of these financial burdens? How do you, and even within the contracts themselves, are there equal opportunities for training? Are there equal stipend opportunities, even if they're not the same? How do you kind of work around those issues to ensure equity and fairness?
Yeah, that definitely is a real issue, and it becomes more of a retention issue as well in a lot of ways. The great thing about contracts is you just you follow it. You obviously negotiate it, and then you follow what's in there. For the non-union staff, I guess they don't have that luxury. So it's very difficult. I think my philosophy is for staff like that is to train them more, cross-train them more, have them wear multiple hats. So in a situation where an opportunity comes along, maybe they can take that next step or move forward in their career. But in terms of equity, the step increases and cost of living adjustments is very critical. So I want to keep everyone in lockstep. So typically, most communities, the step and COLAs, within the union contracts. The non-union folks would have a similar path forward, so to speak. But I guess that's not always the case, and if it isn't, I would, we wanna work with, the select board to make sure that, those non-union staff members are, also, we're treated, fair and equitably, along with the union staff as well.
Thank you for your time so far.
Of course.
In this town, we have many employees who are eager to become more professional, learn their jobs better. How would you move that forward in creating a culture of professionalism?
So I think, honestly, a lot of times the wanting to learn or better yourself is the first big step. I can't force someone to get more training or learn more. If they're willing and able to, I think that's a fantastic first step, and I think we should all be supportive of that. Some of it would ultimately come down to adding cost to it, but I think there are a lot of ways where you can do it more economically. You can certainly have trainings where it's a group of folks instead of sending people out for training individually, which tends to be very expensive. It's certainly the procurement training that I've received through the state is very time consuming and very costly as well. But I think given the right situation, you could find opportunities where you have a group of folks in the same room for afternoon or a day or two, learning about something important, whether it's learning presentation skills, speaking better, in a more formal, environment, learning more about, certain technologies that are out there. I think there's some opportunities, certainly, there's a lot of grants out there that, we might be able to utilize to get some training for staff, certainly. I think police and fire, are pretty big on getting those types of grants for training, but I think, other staff members need professional training as well. And, I think we need to explore grant opportunities and, other resources that, the state might offer. I know the state offers quite a bit of training, either free of charge or, very, very inexpensive options as well.
Anybody have any other? Oh, okay, sure.
This town depends heavily on grants. Okay. What has been your experience in getting the biggest grant and then just a grant that may not be that big but really benefited the town?
Grants are immensely important. We were actually doing an analysis because we are a MBTA community. So what that means is if we don't pass certain the MBTA Communities Act, we would lose out on certain grants. So we actually have a part-time grant writer who came up with a list of grants that Townsend has received over the last couple of years, and it was over $2 million. And this is a person who's working 10 hours a week, so, their part-time salary more than paid for everything. Most recently, we got a grant for a playground at our local elementary school, and we were able to mobilize very quickly and get that done. We had a ribbon cutting ceremony over the summer. I think almost 100 kids showed up, so that was a really good project, but it, you know, it impacted so many people. It was so nice to see all the kiddos out there with their parents on a, you know, Sunday afternoon, you know, during the ribbon cutting ceremony. And then we have some other grants that I was a part of where we, you know, extended a rail trail, you know, in town. And those are, you know, in the, you know, $300,000 to $500,000 range. And, you know, those are the big ones, but we have a pretty small one that we recently got too, which was for telehealth at the senior center. So we got a grant, and, you know, telehealth is, you know, where you know, you're sitting in front of a computer and you're talking to, you know, either a doctor or a specialist. So we actually got a grant for, you know, the equipment. We had a dedicated space at the senior center where, you know, a person would have privacy to, you know, have a doctor's telehealth visits, or, you know, a medical specialist. And that grant was maybe $3,000, but I think, you know, it's gonna be very impactful when we get it up and running, you know, in about a month or so, because, you know, I mentioned before, we have a pretty significant senior population. You know, a lot of them don't drive, and, you know, getting some sort of bus ride, you know, to Worcester or Boston is, you know, not feasible economically, maybe even physically as well. So I think something like that, you know, it's only $3,000, but I think it's very impactful for, you know, our senior citizens in the community.
Any questions from the board?
We have, what, not even 10 minutes left to probably give him time to ask
I was
questions.
gonna say, just to offer you the opportunity to ask the board any questions that you might have, if you have any.
I do. So I noticed that your town accountant just gave notice, or was retiring, and you have a town planner that's also vacant. So that's, you know, two big department heads, I would say, that's currently vacant. You know, is this like a rough time for the town, just, or bad timing? You know, having two department head vacancies is, and certainly the town accountant now with the tax recap and free cash, and, you know, the tax rate being set, you know, might not be the best time for, you know, that sort of vacancy. So, you know, how are you guys dealing with that? And, you know, yeah.
I guess Paul and I can start this one. It is an interesting time. There's been a little bit of shifting in the roles, you know, prior to our town accountant that's retiring. She's actually finance director, town accountant, and we had taken her on as a full-time from a significant part-time role. The town planner that recently just left was an interim position. So we're actually looking to revamp, if you will. We've recently just done an exercise to update all of our job descriptions, making sure that the staff's, what their current responsibilities are, match their job descriptions, so that we can ensure that everything's accurate, that the jobs match what the staff are doing, that salaries are commensurate with what those responsibilities are. So we've kind of taken an opportunity to also at the same time reevaluate what some of those job descriptions are. So one of those being the planner, where this board was just recently discussing a lot of the community development portion of the planner's role. And, you know, do we want to continue to see that in the role of the planner, which we do. Everybody was on board with that. It's an important part. So it's a little bit of a transition, if you will, where, you know, I think it's been a while since that a lot of these positions haven't been looked at. To kind of one of your earlier comments, you know, some of the, you know, people had left over the years, and some of those responsibilities had been shifted to other roles and responsibilities. So it's it's certainly been interesting and a transition, and we're trying to take some opportunity to evaluate what the town needs in those roles, and then post applicable job descriptions for that. That makes any.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I think one of the things the town is facing is we've had quite a few people who have been in service a long time, who are retiring.
Yep.
And to fill that wealth of knowledge has been very difficult. And that's why we're kind of in that situation. We want it, we need it, but,
Yep.
you know.
And that kind of what keeps me up at night as well is, suddenly, a department head who has 20, 30 years of experience, retires or leaves for another community, and all that, institutional knowledge that they have, can't be really passed on to anyone. Some of our departments are so small, there's only one other person there. That's why I'm very big on cross-training and, trying to, mentor, the next person in line to sort of be, the next successor, if you will, in that role. And, but sometimes that doesn't happen and, you're left trying to figure out what to do. And, sometimes you're under the gun to do something very quickly. Sometimes you have a little bit more time to, pivot. But yeah, that certainly keeps me up at night. And, being a small community, sometimes, those opportunities to, pass on knowledge to, an assistant, department head simply isn't there. So I feel for you guys, and I hope you guys, right the ship, so to speak.
We do too. Any more questions?
Yeah, maybe just one more. What are some of the big priorities you have for the the next town administrator? Obviously, besides, getting up to speed, learning the ins and outs, getting to know the staff, are there any big priorities or projects that the select board has that they would like the TA to sort of tackle, in the near short term?
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to.
You guys can take it.
No, go for it.
Okay.
I think one of the, as you've kind of pointed out, I think one of our biggest priorities is gonna be the budget. We have struggled for a long time with the structural deficit, and we have a long history, we're not the only ones, of not passing overrides. So just trying to find a balance to continue to provide services that the town expects and wants, with not having money to provide those services. So how do we,
Yep.
what is the right balance, and making changes that are necessary, and just try to, get the town on board, with and transparency also, with what any sort of budget is going to, how it's going to impact the town. So I for me personally, that's the biggest priority is budget related.
Yep. And if I can speak to, sort of some of the things that I've done, the school budget being such a big one, and you guys are a regional school district. In a lot of ways, I think the formula is very, it's not friendly towards, exactly. So I actually testified in front of the Ways and Means Committee. It was virtually, I didn't trek all the way to Boston, but I actually did speak virtually, at a hearing back in March or April during the budget season, when, it passes throughout, multiple layers before it gets to the governor. And I was speaking to change the school formula, so, our superintendent was also there, along with some school committee members, but, I did, speak, get a chance to speak, so to speak, for about 2 or 3 minutes in front of the Ways and Means Committee, trying to change the formula and how not changing it is really significantly impacting our budget. And, the town can't, shoulder any more of the, these, 6-8% increases from the school side. I see your budget and, all these segments that you have, and, everything has like a negative value except for education. So, that's how I came to my current budget. We cut as much as we could, and we literally only grew by 0.5% last year. And, you know, it's years and years of big numbers following us, you know, because, you know, that big number from 2 years ago, it just keeps following you, you know, forever. So that's kind of where, you know, so, you know, I'm in the same situation, and, you know, I'm not sure we're doing any better, but I think a lot of similar communities are facing the same issues, so.
Yeah, just a quick comment on to that. I think, to me, a lot of what we need is future planning and not long-term planning, because I don't wanna say, you know, 10 years out, but I think a lot of what we do and a lot of what we have to do is reactiveness towards our budget because of where we are budgetarily. And what, to your point, you know, a lot of those are fixed costs that we don't have a lot of control over. So we're reacting constantly to that, but, you know, what do we really want to be? You've said a couple times that, you know, you think that Rutland wants to stay as a residential community and that businesses coming in wouldn't necessarily be, but I've been at plenty of meetings, even before being on the select board, where people were asking why we're not bringing more businesses to town. So, you know, what does the town really want? And what does that look like? And I think partnering with the town administrator, hopefully a planner if we ever get to hire one, and the select board and other boards as well, to, you know, really nail down where we want to head and what direction and how to get there. So that, I think, is important to me.
I feel the town is experiencing we're in an era where we have a lot of buildings that we haven't kept up for a while, so our capital expenditures over the next 10 to 15 years will probably come somewhere between 20 and 30 million. We don't have the capital. The town took the initiative to establish a capital stabilization fund.
Yep.
Our debt ratio, from what I'm told, is pretty low. So
Yep.
maybe but we need to look at what do we do with the town hall that's overcrowded and overused, so to speak, you know? We're facing that. I know I have the fire chief here, so I will say this in his defense, and that the town has grown so much, and the equipment and the personnel we need, we've almost grown out of the fire station.
Yep.
Now, when that happens, I don't know how we look at it. So we are facing a bubble, in my opinion, of capital. So that's a big issue, I think, that'll have to be dealt with in the years ahead.
Yeah, and, you know, that's gonna mean, higher debt payments, which is gonna increase your budget, and you might be sacrificing something else, you know, to pay for. And I'm not here to, you know, make those decisions. I think those decisions will be pretty tough. You know, a new fire station is not cheap. A new town hall or a new addition is not cheap. You know, I think you said 20 or 30 million.
Well,
I think that's probably like on the low side, given how expensive things are, and if you're, you know, trying to estimate what things are gonna cost 5-7 years down the road. You know, I wish I had a crystal ball. So those are very difficult choices, and I think ultimately, you know, you're gonna have to, you know, go for like a debt exclusion or something. You know, those eventually do fall off, but those can be around for 15 to 30 years, and, you know, that's a pretty pill to swallow for, you know, some taxpayers, because those debt exclusions can be pretty expensive.
and that's, to me, one of the biggest things, really. In 2030, for example, supposedly we're facing a $10 million sewer, water infrastructure program, which may not be spent in 1 year.
Yep.
So, this is what kind of we have to look at.
Yeah.
And how do we pay for something like
Yep.
that? So that's where we come into, how do we do the budget? What do we do about, you know, getting the money?
Yep.
Because these are our capitals, and we just can't keep letting our equipment and everything just go to the side.
Absolutely. And, you know, in my public works career, you know, I was heavily involved in water and sewer, and we were doing 10-year projections at that point, you know, because we had to see what the rates were gonna look like, year over year, and some of these projects are very expensive, and, you know, you can't do them all at once, they're in phases. So I certainly have that experience and know how to sort of budget out correctly and see what the implications are, either for the rates, you know, for the water ratepayers, it being an enterprise fund, you might be a little bit more insulated, but, you know, you could be talking double-digit increases, you know, which I've seen, you know. The water environment is getting more and more tough. The regulations are getting more and more strict. PFAS limits have been getting more and more stringent over the years, which means more treatment, which means more either equipment or, you know, new facilities to accommodate those stringent requirements. And, you know, you're looking at potentially 10-15% increases year over year for the ratepayers for those services. And it's unavoidable, but you can always look for grants. The state has a state revolving fund that you can either get very low interest, either 2 or 4%, and in some cases 0%, or even some principal forgiveness. So those are some of the areas you could look at specifically for the water treatment side. But for a new fire station or a new town hall, you know, I think that's probably going to be some sort of debt exclusion. So.
Okay.
Adding to that, equipment replacement programs, okay? In other words, DPW, police and fire, and hats off to all three of those guys because they really know where the grants are, what they're trying to apply for, and what they're working with. Mm-hmm. But, you know, besides that, there should be some allotments, I guess, made for an eventuality for replacing snowplows or cruisers or fire trucks or ambulance or whatever, so yeah.
And my philosophy on that is I try to eke out an extra year or 2 or 3 if possible. I talk to the guys who are working on it, get their honest opinion. You know, we can eke out another couple years and not really pay too much in repairs. I consider that a win. But then again, with double-digit increases to equipment, it's almost like, you know, if I wait 2 years, it goes up by 25%, maybe I should buy it now. But I don't think, but in a way, you can't always think that way. Otherwise, we'd be buying everything like today versus 3 years from now. But it really is a consideration. But I certainly try to eke out as much as I can out of equipment as possible. Sometimes even beyond their useful life, if we have a really good mechanic that can sort of maintain it or, keep things running.
Thank you.
All right. We want to thank you very much for coming out this evening. We appreciate your time very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, me too.
Very nice
Thank
to
you,
meet you.
nice to meet you,
Good
thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Just have a informal break until next candidate.
Yep. And if she happens to show up early, I did put a disclaimer on the agenda that the times may vary. So if you feel like you wanna take her early and she's here, you guys can do that too.
All right, great, thank you.
We were just trying to leave a little buffer just in case.
Yeah.
Because it changed. A bathroom call. Zero bids. Anybody picks it business, just forget it.
So, just pencil it in. Okay.
I said, I'll email you.
Okay.
You'd have to build a building.
Okay.
But
An interesting fact.
Okay.
if we're gonna get this on the agenda, then I gave him everything. And we'll see what happens.
Pencil it in. We don't have it,
Absolutely.
we can stay.
Yes, then we can meet.
Okay, yes. Great, sounds good. Thank you.
Simple as that. Oh, it's one thing, but as far as a business.
Every store that I can see, and it's Trader Joe's, because they've got more of a niche market. But the market, right,
But that's because we have a lot of people, they've got plenty of stuff, they're all stocked.
Oh, perfect.
Example's good.
they're nice.
So you don't have to drive to Holden, you go to the big shop, and you need a little thing, I use it all the time.
I spend way too much money.
It's right down the street.
I drive by.
Safe.
Took right, got rid of it. Many employees feel that way.
I would say there's almost 100 full-time, yeah, and probably during the summer, 60 part-time.
So somewhere between 150 and 200.
Yep, yep.
It's called, what the heck was it called? Something, it was for kids in high school, very few credits, and it was a speed up program. Jack Lynch was the administrator, I don't know Jack Lynch, Jack was the administrator, and David went there as a teacher. And Jack, like, so
They, so 10 years ago, they had a resident in town donate $13 million to build the fire station. Mm-hmm.
Guy was a nice guy.
That's the only reason how it got done. And then it was donated money to businesses. Yeah, so they've lucked out on big capital stuff. Yeah. So the fire station didn't have to go through procurement because they hired the company to build it and then gifted it to the town. It's pretty cool.
You're cold, Leah?
You wouldn't have
I get cold at the truck, so I've been rotating on me. Do you see my hair blowing? It's like a wind tunnel over here.
Is it too hot? Okay. I figured after your walk yesterday, you need it.
Okay, so I'm gonna put it on.
Those are, who sets their heat to 72? Come on, people.
When you're not paying for it, of course you do.
Yeah. What do you say?
The hell we're not
Can
paying
you see
for
my
it?
hair blowing in it? It's like legitly.
What do you mean we're not paying for it?
You know,
Oh,
It's shared.
yeah.
shared.
It's shared,
Oh.
yeah.
Is that
So
how
when the
insurance
library
works?
has to
Yeah,
close,
that's right, yeah.
if the library has to close in a couple weeks, it's because we had this
Yeah,
jack
that's
to
right, yeah.
72.
Yeah. my mini splits were set to like 68 in my kids' rooms or 69 or whatever they were set to. And like my wife was texting me at like 10 o'clock. She's like, I don't think the mini splits were working. It's like 64 in the kids' rooms, but the mini splits said it was like 70. But we have a separate, like we have a thermometer, like a Google thermometer off in the other side of the wall to make sure we're. And that one says like 62 or 64, and I was like, oh, ruh-roh.
Oh no, are they not working?
I don't know.
All
It's a problem for another day.
So all of them have to be on heat, you can't have any.
Yeah, we don't have any. Yeah, they're on.
Okay, okay.
I've heard that, and I'm not entirely sure I believe that because I've seen it not be the case, but I have been told that. No, they're all on heat. Two of them were on different Wi-Fi networks. Which I was like, I wonder if that's why it's. But like, why would that? They're
Yeah.
finicky.
We have ours set on 62 because it gets hot. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the room, right?
Yeah.
Like some of the rooms, that's what you need, and then
Yeah.
some, like, we have one in our master bedroom, and like our master's so awkwardly shaped that, like where it
just different
is,
space, yeah.
it's never gonna reach a certain spot in the room, so like it, it's not the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
But like for AC, it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
They suck.
Ours too. This is our first winter with
Is it?
the mini splits,
Are
so
you
we're
gonna
just
use it all winter, or are you?
probably,
Couple $100 million,
So you get
right?
your
just
first
because, I mean, I guess I'm paying on one end for
Yeah, just wait for
electricity
your electric
versus
bill.
oil.
Yeah.
We used them all summer at the AC and
Yeah, just wait for your electric bill.
with the heat.
Wait for your
You
electric
think
bill.
so? Alright.
I'd shut them off for you.
Well, we'll see, cause
You
I
have
was,
solar?
no,
I'd shut them off for you.
I was very pleasantly surprised with running them all
The
summer with
AC
the
is,
AC.
they are very, 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 very,
But
very efficient
To your
AC.
point, in the winter where they're less efficient and they just keep cranking out.
The first year I had them, we ran them in December and then January. And my December electric bill, which you of course don't get until like January something, was like $1,200. And I was like, oh, that's, yeah, and so was my January.
Well, it's only supplemental, we still have the oil heat, so it kicks on,
Okay, so you do, so I had my oil heat completely off.
yeah.
They had it. That's like my water bill, my water barrels.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that was supposed to help reduce.
It's just a big.
So I installed a drip irrigation system.
Yeah.
So run it at certain hours.
Well, that's Dory.
And I just got my quarterly bill.
I
drove by it the other day.
I took a tour. My nephew took me.
So it's like, when you say rate setting, I'm
Yeah.
going, okay.
It's up there. It's big.
I'd never been on one before, but I've never been more thankful to have a well. I mean, it's got its own set of problems,
So you
but.
say, until your well breaks.
Until-
Yeah, and then you're like, damn it, I wish I was on.
Ours is original to the house, I'm waiting
Yeah.
for the day when the water is just,
I have no doubt mine is extremely
it's coming,
old.
knock on wood.
Well, the old one was pretty long.
And then obviously you gotta empty your sewer theoretically, or your septic.
We do it every 2 years.
Yeah, that's what I would
Yeah,
do it
it
too.
hasn't been too bad,
Filter, then you gotta
but
worry about like the filter.
But you pay for that out front.
It's a nice
Yeah,
building.
exactly.
Yep.
And then you're
Yeah.
gonna get it pumped every
Yes.
couple years, that's a big
Yeah,
deal.
it should be,
home ownership.
It's all it's cracked up to be. It's gonna get better with 50-year mortgage.
I don't know if the bill ones, you gotta remember.
I saw that and I was like, I thought this was a joke.
I'm not sure where she's coming from.
It should be a joke.
I just looked up on her,
Yeah,
she was a Fairhaven.
Are you prepared
Oh,
to
yeah.
not be able?
Those are the kinds of things you look at and you just laugh.
is that down at the Cape?
Yeah,
So they'll build in the back.
Say-
to Wareham and all that area down there.
Oh, well.
That's what they did at Darwin, they built to the side.
Well, you know where New Bedford is? Fall River? It's kind of.
Sure they're not.
International. South, how long you going for that?
just a week.
Maybe that's why she's not
Yeah,
really.
that's one way to get done against
That's what I'm saying,
delays.
so-
I had my boss come over from, he was affected, so don't be, don't
Good
listen to
thing is
everything.
I'm the first flight there.
Yeah, so there you go.
The only reason I know
Don't worry,
that
I've
is I
been
had
saying
clients
this
down
for you,
there.
'cause it's like,
So we
God,
don't
you-
see him for 3 weeks. Now he's going.
That's a long way to go.
Cut up the,
Yeah, we know what you're doing, we got it moved on. Yeah, I want somebody to.
Quinn thought she was hot stuff today in her new clothes.
Oh, did she?
She goes, Mom, it's really warm. I said, and she like questioned it for me, I said, oh, that's the style. She goes, oh, okay. She probably could have waited till next year, but I was like,
See, and
it's
mine was
perfect,
just
it's really
opposite.
cold.
At the last minute, I'm like, my stuff is laid out like 2 weeks before we go.
I know where I feel about this whole
Oh, no, it takes me like a week.
Yeah.
I do like to see it without a tie though, because that's the one running joke.
Where's Paul?
I don't.
Rose was our lookout.
Ah,
As soon as Paul gets back, yeah.
Okay.
Geez, I don't think it's really funny. He went to the center. Tamika, I wish you would said.
are we planning on discussing after tomorrow's candidate? Is that our plan?
December 8th.
Deliberation after
But when it
tomorrow,
gets closer, I'll let you know.
tomorrow's candidate.
Are we intending to make a decision by then, or are we just discussing our feelings on the candidate? Like, do we,
Even us.
or are we doing that at the next election meeting?
No, I think if the board would like to make a decision, they can.
I said, so that's why
Our decision's made to,
Library?
No.
I was really just determining timing of if I could tell my wife I'd be home to put a kid to bed or not.
It depends, do you wanna do bedtime or no?
Do I want to? Depends on which kid I have to put down.
Okay, that's fair.
do you have one that
I stick
drags
a
it
bench
out
off too.
as long as?
We have one that drags it out and doesn't wanna do any of it, and one that,
A couple of my friends have done what I did.
so my son,
Direction.
you could just drop him in his crib and he'd be like, cool, thanks, see ya. And he's been like that since he was born.
That's
But
nice.
it's the opposite, has been like that since she was
A
born.
little bit
Yep.
tied.
If you got an older school,
I try a little hard.
She fights every single minute
That's
of
what I
it.
was gonna
Yep.
say, that's what I was gonna say.
that sounds
I
like.
just, but I don't know anybody.
My
Ours didn't fight, it was just more,
Really?
they
No, no,
kept
no.
talking about, well, I wanna do this, and I have to do this, and we're like, no.
They're never as thirsty
The
as when it's
grandkids
bedtime.
want lunch, not a
You know, they
problem,
get
come
home
on.
like
I
have
was
a
like,
good
really?
day and they're like great, and then they don't play about it till it's time for bed.
I just
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly, even now, my son, like, he'll be in bed for 10 minutes, and then he'll get up, my knee hurts, I'm like, oh, yeah, all of a sudden, right now, you've decided?
The Amish built them.
Yep.
And you, all you do is put the foundation. I got a gazebo in my backyard, I really wanted a gazebo.
No, so I definitely don't want to, but I feel bad having being gone Monday now, Wednesday,
Thursday.
Thursday.
Put the gazebo in the back.
If I take too long, I start getting messages from my son. Letting them know.
No, I mean, they're in bed at, hopefully asleep by 7:30, so
Oh gosh, that sounds
Still have
amazing.
littles, you
maybe
know?
3,
Yeah,
3
that's fair. That's very fair.
almost 4, I guess, but.
Now I'm getting to the point where I'm like ready for bed before my kids have to go to bed.
That's
You
what
need to come upstairs, just go upstairs and read.
Yeah, fend
I'm going to
yourself.
Yeah, that's my only me time, so like,
Yep,
Absolutely.
it used to be, it's not my me time anymore. I can't watch my shows because my kids are around. Kick them out of the one room.
well, I just go into my office. So if they're still awake,
Yeah.
I would just go do whatever you want, I'll go in my office, I have a TV in my office, I have a bed in my office. It's our
Your spare room?
spare room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
We don't really have an office. It's really my dog's bed too, so.
It's a place to hide out when you need to
Yeah.
go.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
A few years ago. But I should look into it, maybe we could find it.
I hide there a lot. I mean, at work.
One time I came home from a meeting and I was in my car
Fundraise the hell out
next
of
day
it.
and I apparently took a little too
Well, we
long.
raised.
And they came down and found me in the damn garage and they're in the car door, they're like, Mom, it's taking you so long to get up. I'm like, guys.
Because this is what.
That's not surprising.
You wait till the fourth quarter.
Hi.
Their quota first.
And I did everything.
Jen Ledger, Chair, it's nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
Good evening and welcome.
Pleasure, thank you.
Hi, I'm Leah.
Hi, it's a pleasure.
Harry, nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure.
Alex, nice to meet you.
Pleasure. Hello? Hi,
Yeah, you got me.
Jeez.
So just to make sure we get through all of our questions, and I'm sure we'll have follow-ups, we're gonna get right into the questions. And so hopefully we'll have time for follow-ups, and then any questions that you might have for the board at the end as well. That works, okay? All right, so jumping right into it. If you could please describe your management style for us, and how will you create a culture of professionalism and ensure accountability without being a micromanager?
Certainly. One of my biggest aspect in regards to management, it sort of goes hand in hand with leadership, is in regards to being and working in collaboration. I think municipal government is a place that without collaboration, it becomes departments, agencies, boards, committees working in silos and not necessarily seeing the impact of the work that they're doing. So it's important for all in every departments, as well as boards, to be informative, transparent, and also communicative with some of the other boards that, whether they think they may have a direct impact or not. My management style, I guess in talking about accountability, I would think that more towards supervision staff departments and even to some aspect boards and as well, is making sure that they're doing what they're charged to do, in that all boards and committees have a charge, a mission, vision. And so when one starts, and one of the things, and I'll use a lot of times examples in some of the communities I've worked in the last community I was in, boards would publicly talk about other boards. And, if they didn't agree with them, they would defame them in a public meeting, and we changed that culture slowly by doing a lot of board trainings, a lot of department trainings as well, to change that cultural norms. And also I made sure that each board and committee had a staff liaison, so that they had assistance in helping them guide through some of the things that they were blindly going through and not understanding some of the regulations and responsibilities they had. And then the same thing with departments. I sort of utilize my management style as if I'm the analogy is I'm the conductor, right? I'm the conductor in a band. I may not know how to play every single instrument, but I know when they're supposed to be coming in, when they participate. If they don't sound right, if they're playing or doing something off key, you start to pick up on that, and then you start having those conversations and understanding, is it because you're not sure of what you're supposed to be doing, or is it because you didn't practice, you don't, and give them the skills and the abilities to grow and learn and become subject matter experts. A lot of the decisions ultimately that you are making for the community, as well as input that I give to you on behalf of the departments as well, needs to be accurate. So I'd much rather them say and do, I'm not available, or I'm not sure, I'm uncertain, rather than making up something. You make a decision based on that information, and it, 3 weeks down the road, it hits the fan, the proverbial, you know what I want to say. So I think it's important. And accountability, ultimately, it's a growth opportunity as well for the staff.
Okay. How do you plan to communicate with the board as individuals and as a whole? What tools do you use to communicate? And how do you build trust with the board where members have differing opinions?
Well, one of the things in regards to communicating, when I come into a community, I'll have one-on-one meetings with all of the board members individually. And some board members have liked to have a standing one-on-one meeting with me, whether it's monthly or bi-weekly, however your schedule permits. This is my full-time job. It may not be your full-time job. So trying to give you the information that you need and to be able to do that. So we'll do one-on-one meetings and talk about expectations, how you prefer to communicate. Some may be texts. Sometimes if a situation is arising, and I think it may be important for all of you to have the information collectively, it might be a quick text to everybody, hey, this is happening. I'll give you a call to elaborate further, so you have that information and you're not blindsided with a resident that sees you somewhere and they end up saying something to the effect and you're wondering what's going on in the town, and it's really something you should be aware of. I will share information collectively. I've sent blindly emails, BCC the board, and also letting you know that all board members are BCC'd, so that way, it's a collective board email. I found that to be easier because by default, sometimes people inadvertently respond and their auto reply is to reply all, and not to get into any problems with open meeting law violations. I find that that's often easier because then you can just reply to me. In establishing trust, I think one of the biggest things for me is I have a sense of integrity, doing what's right and what's wrong, and also making sure that any and every decision and information that I provide for you is for the greater good, and making sure that that is whatever the vision of the board is what I'm fulfilling. I stand by that aspect of who I am as a person and the work that I do in municipal government. And so I think if provided the opportunity to serve this community, it will show in who I am, and that's, it'll resume in all aspects of my work. There was one community that, we can discuss it further if you prefer, but challenge some of the ethical aspect of it. I stuck to the ethical piece of my conviction, and it put me at odds with the select board. And so I would stand, hindsight's 20/20, would I do it all over again? Yes, I would, and in the same way, because I think not even an oath in regards to it, but the ethical standards that the state has is more important than favors of a collective one or two members of a board. And I say that with all due respect to whatever positions you may have. So I think that's saying and building trust would be based on those aspects for me. I would provide you all the same information regardless of where you stand on the spectrum of position. That's your call. Like, my job is to give you the information the same way. There was one community that we were trying to do a Prop 2.5 override. A lot of people were in opposition to it. I gave them all the same information as the people that were in favor. How and what they do that information with. It's part of the democratic process, but it's also part of the integrity of providing residents and people with information and establishing trust and making sure we're not withholding information, which translates to transparency. If I do that, then it reflects upon you as a board as well, and then the same thing redounds to the community.
Thank you. Can you please rate your financial management and budget skills on a scale of 1 to 5 and tell us why you gave us this rating?
Oh, okay. The three aspects of municipal government: finance, personnel, and planning, and I would probably rate the finances 4.5. I've always held positions where the finances has been my responsibility, even in developing the budget. And in all of the communities I've served, I've been the one that works with the department heads to establish a balanced budget. I presented to the finance committee, presented to the select board, and any processes in between of streamlined processes to make it more effective and efficient. I've been in communities that, again, I think I talked about the Prop 2.5 override and trying to get that through the process. It was my first time doing it. A lot of lesson learned in regards to it. So, a lot of the communities in Massachusetts now are facing a lot of those same oppositions and also the possibility of having to do an override. So I would think that I have the skill sets to get us through that if it is here, and I think you guys are close to that edge from what I looked at your finances.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell us about a time when you had to make difficult budgets or staffing decisions.
Yeah, I think the biggest budgetary challenge was when we did the Prop 2.5 override. One of the things that ended up happening is that we put it through, it failed. The next year's budget, we were $2.5 million off balance, and having to come up with $2.5 million out of the budget. I'm sorry, my phone is vibrating, I apologize. Having to do a $2.5 million override won't, $2.5 million shortfall made it very challenging, and one of the decisions we had to make was ultimately, instead of pitting departments against each other, I had because I have monthly department head meetings, I had all of the department head meetings, and, before, when you're prepping for town meeting, from January until town meeting, it's sort of high season time, so we meet more often and frequently. And having to figure out where those cuts were gonna come from. And ironically, I didn't want to just say, all right, 2.5 million and work with the finance team to be able to do a certain percentage from everybody's budget. So different departments said, we can go without this, positions that weren't filled, can we not fill those, and to give us the cushion we needed. The hardest decision was actually, trash, and it was post-COVID because, all of the prices skyrocketed post-COVID in regards to it. The trash contract, we used to provide trash. The trash contract went from 700,000 to well over 1 million. And so what we ended up doing, and the board that had to make that decision was a elected independent board, so I had to have them vote and agree to start charging for trash because the override failed. And so we needed to come up with a deficit. So it was a hard decision to make budgetarily. And the harder decision was to convince another independent board that it was in the best interest, or otherwise we would have had to literally cut staff significantly, and it wouldn't have been pretty. And I think that was the easiest, toughest decision, but the easiest, less impactful to the greater majority of the community.
Describe your experience and responsibilities working within a regional school district.
I've worked in a regional school district before, particularly around the vocational school systems. I actually lived up until about a year ago in Sturbridge. And so Sturbridge had a regional school system as well, so my kids were a part of that system. I sat on the regional school committee as well as the local school committee and the select board, so I'm very familiar. And, from a management perspective, there are certain simplicities to budgeting when it's a regional school system, but there's also some challenges because the simplicity of them just giving you the number is also the downfall for the municipality, because oftentimes there's other issues that you have that you can't necessarily challenge as you would in a non-regional process. So there's pros and cons, and I don't know some of the dynamics here to speak specifically in regards to what would be the best option, but I've had an extensive experience working with regional schools.
What experience have you had with shared services or partnerships with other municipalities? And what are the challenges and opportunities of such endeavors?
Well, I use the term regionalization, right? Being able to utilize those pieces. I think for a community of this size, it's important, and I think a lot of the central mass, I mean, the same thing when I lived in Sturbridge. We had to do a lot more, and when I was town administrator in Blandford, you had to do regional approaches. I think it's incredibly useful in utilizing the resources and sharing the cost of something. The positives is that you have more buy-in from a bigger community and you get a bigger, bigger, to use a cliche, bigger bang for your buck. The downfall in what I've done in the past in trying to negotiate some regional programs and some regional shared services is I always make sure that the shared services is in the community that I'm working in, because then we reap more of the benefits, ironically. Even if it's like, I'll find you a desk on a corner somewhere, because then you get that person more often and frequently. So if anytime you're looking at it, I would strongly recommend and suggest that whatever you need to do to get to be the house or the home for that shared service, to do so. Because it's just a better impact for the community. I've done it in the way hiring is in the finances. I think that is the next big regional push. There's a shortfall in people going into municipal finance, and so I think that might be the other approach. I was working with Division of Local Services and trying to see if we could come up with a regional approach to shared services, but municipalities, everybody does the same thing, but it's hard to collaborate a regional effort in some of the financial accounting and accountability with the warrants and everything else, so.
Pardon me, what is your approach to managing conflicting priorities among staff across departments and within the select board?
Conflicting?
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting. The way that I manage, I don't often find that we have conflicting priorities, because ultimately the select board sets the vision, and whatever the vision is what we try to, and you dictate the vision, the goal, and then I make it into tangible, measurable outcomes and work with the various departments. If, say, the fire chief wants a brand new truck, and DPW hasn't fixed a hole in a particular street for 10 years because they don't have funding, I would think the hole that everybody drives through on Main Street would be the priority. So I don't know that it's a lot of the things we do is conflicting. At the same time, I think it's important for the department heads to advocate for their departments, because that's how they move their department ahead and forward as well, and get what they need to move the service that they're providing to the residents.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Can you please describe your role and or experience in human resources and collective bargaining?
Oh, I love collective bargaining. I know there's not a lot of people that say it. I do. I've negotiated, and I intentionally make sure that all of the contracts end on the same year. I've negotiated 7 collective bargaining agreements. And successfully, I think my approach is always in regards to a win-win situation, so that you don't want it to be that you're shortfalling the collective bargaining members, because they are employees and they have to come back to work. And if they feel like you gave them the short end of the stick, it's gonna be a long, time before they go back to the table. And vice versa. My accountability is to the taxpayers, and can't give them everything, and so negotiating and moving forward, so that collective bargaining and negotiating is one of my superpowers. The first half of that was,
can you please describe your role and or experience in human resources?
Yeah, I've done HR. my wheelhouse, my, like, the safe, if I had to do, if they said you could do anything in, so, as a town administrator, what would you wanna do every day? It would be the HR part of it. I think there's a lot to be done, the human resource or the human aspect of municipal government, I think is really the key aspect, benefits. Health insurance, FYI, come January is gonna be going up to 20%, so it's gonna be crazy. So it's gonna pose another interesting challenge. But in one of the community side note, we were self-funded, so I had a lot of direct impact with benefits in working with the school systems as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I get the weird question.
They said, there's no weird question.
We have done a social media internet search. What did we find that you feel you want to comment on or explain?
Social media.
And
Or
internet.
internet. Well, you can't be in my position and be a seasoned town manager without having somebody not like me. And I speak direct, like I have nothing to hide. I'm sure I have, from my understanding, from my last community, what I call a stalker is a person who's been following my career and intentionally putting negative things out there. And so, it's the nature of what I do. I'm a public figurehead and I chose this career and I love what I do. All of that may be out there. I mean, I'd be more than happy to entertain any specific concern, but that you may have relative to what you have done that may be of concern for you. But you can't. I've been doing this for 10 years, and there's no way that I'm not on the internet. Now my goal is to make sure my grandchildren, when I have them, really looks at it in a more positive light. And trying to I always think of in 100 years when my great-great-great-grandchildren are doing ancestry research, But anyways.
What do you see as the key challenges and opportunities for Rutland over the next 5 years, and how would you address them?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Yep. What would you see as the key challenges and opportunities for Rutland over the next 5 years, and how would you address them?
I think the finances is going to be the biggest piece in regards to contracts are going up, prices of product is going up. So every single service, health insurance, benefits, everything's going up, but you can't raise taxes beyond 2.5%. Just looking at health insurance, I just came out of a workshop with it. One community they did like a 25% increase. 2.5 is not gonna compete, and even if you cut and, level fund everything, you're still not gonna up to 25%. I think that's one of the biggest challenges from my research. That you're working on the charter, I couldn't figure out where exactly it is relative to establishing that. I think that in the selling point of the charter to the residents. And housing, because you're part of the MBTA Act. You're not?
No, we are not.
No.
We're not.
Luckily, we're not.
Oh, okay.
One town out.
One time, yeah, I thought you were. I know, we were in the last community I was in, and, I do have some strategic ideas, but since you're not part of it, it doesn't matter. I think housing, though, is going to be a problem. There's a lot, people can't live with the rising cost of housing and even in necessarily purchasing homes, but if you choose not to, rent is just as high and pricing people out. I looked at your population and your population has been increasing. And as you're increasing, there's gonna be different housing demands and looking at that piece of it. And with the master plan, hopefully the planning board has incorporated some of those housing needs in that master plan. And I've had experiences working with master plans as well, so I would hope that I could be an asset in that area. And then the every other day things that people come into town hall for.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, we have, I'm assuming, follow-up questions. I think there will be some, but before we get into those, can you just give us a 2-minute closing statement on why you feel you would be a good fit for the position?
I'm a skilled town manager, town administrator, and I say town manager lowercase. I've made municipal government my career. I've only worked in the public sector. And I feel like I look at things in a very unique way, but staying within the boundaries of MGL and policies and regulations. I'm a good and well aspect of not only a change agent, but also a strategic planner and putting your vision and your goals into practice and being able to do things. I am a doer, and so I need to see results. Oftentimes, when things are moving slowly, I try to move them along so that we get results and people feel like they're seeing government, and with the lack of trust in government within the recent history, I think it's important to establish that and show people what you're actually doing in tangible outcomes, and that's one of my strengths. And also, I'm open and transparent, and I don't speak in ambiguity. I think it's important for people to know exactly what I mean, and not try to figure it out and try to, what did she you'll know where I stand, and I'm also good at being able to take criticism and take feedback and readjust and correct when needed.
I'll start with follow-up questions if the board's comfortable. On when you were talking about your management style and ensuring accountability, you mentioned that you had that each committee had a staff liaison. Could you just go into that in a little bit more detail on how that worked, how you saw the benefit of that, and how did it actually benefit the committees that had those liaisons?
Very much so. So when I came into the community, everybody was working in their own independent silo, and even town hall was somewhat chaotic. Staff were yelling at residents were yelling at staff, and sort of having to change that culture took a little. I'd walk around town hall a lot of the effort was me going out and being visible in public. Then I started to look at the different boards and committees and what they knew and what they were doing, and some with authority, some without, and some sort of putting them within the scope of what their positions were. Some were doing things because they didn't know what they couldn't or what they were supposed to be doing. So there were some issues, because I'm also MCPPO certified, so procurement. So we started developing policies just so that, and templates of things that we didn't reinvent the wheel. During staff meetings, I realized that some departments had 2 or 3 boards and committees that, because of the nature of their job, they had to sit on, and others were, Smoots didn't even have one, so we reallocated that and put everybody, first volunteer levels of interest, and for those who didn't volunteer, they were assigned, and putting the staff liaison onto those committees helped those committees focus in when they were going off track, even in regards to things that they couldn't do that were against MGL. they were brought back, and so it helped us to, our litigation also, and a lot of the complaints lessened because they were staying within the parameters. It was very beneficial. And on the other side of it, for the not the residents, but the staff side, if they had, 2 or 3 meetings, then they didn't have to come into the office at 9, they compensated the time and got comp time for it, so it worked out well. I thought it was one of the better things that ended up working.
Okay. As far as, you're doing, the finance, creating a budget, how do you see yourself working with, finance committee?
That's like saying, how do you feel about working with money? Like, it's a given, right? That's part of the budget process. Their task is to scrutinize and to determine where the best place is. Different finance committees in different communities have different chargers, so they look at their roles differently. I've worked very well with my finance committee. In fact, when we had the shortfall of $2.5 million, I created an advisory board for me because I needed to present the budget, where I had put 2 people from the finance committee, 2 people from the finance committee, 1 from the select board, because our finance committee was a representative finance committee. There was 13 people on that finance committee, like it's a huge finance committee. But I took 2 from there, the select board, the school committee, myself, and a couple of people from my finance team and my HR director to look at, because, the personnel costs and salaries is the biggest part of any budget. And we started just hammering, what can we do? And one of the persons that I had put on there was actually someone who, during public meetings, was always in opposition of what I would present. And when he was on the advisory committee, he started to see, and I started to understand him. And I think that helped in regards to developing our relationship, because he saw that he and I were really on the same page of scrutinizing how funds got utilized. And then that made the team and the rest of the finance committee work better. I mean, it's a collaboration, it's a given, so you work with it, and you gotta make it a collaborative effort, because if you're fighting, they're the ones, I don't know if I didn't look into this part of it, but in the community I was in, they're the ones that make also a recommendation at town meeting. They can recommend against the budget that I present. And for me, it's always important for our finances, for myself, the finance committee, select board, and the school committee, and the superintendent of schools to all be on the same page when we walk into town meeting. Because if we're not on the same page, then not only do you confuse the residents, but then we start playing favorites, and it doesn't work well.
Okay.
The override that you've spoken to a couple times, how long ago was that, or what year was that, and why do you think, in your opinion, did it fail?
It was 2.5 years ago. And why I think it failed is because the community is very adverse to Prop 2.5 overrides. They pride themselves in never having to do an override. And that was when we first introduced it, what got it out of town meeting into because we were struggling to get it out of town meeting, and what took it over the edge wasn't necessarily that it was a Prop 2.5 override, but rather one of the tactics we said is just put it to the residents, because it has to be an election for it. And so everybody there didn't want the override, but they allowed it to go to the residents to let them have a say, and voted to move it forward. If that makes sense.
Do you mind if I piggyback off that question? So having to proceed with an override, what's your methods of communication and transparency as far as the necessity for the override? So how do you
Yeah.
reach out to the residents and say, this is why we're asking for this, this is.
It's a 5-month process, if you're gonna make that determination, you need to know about it January when you start, really December, when you start working on the budget. At that point, you need to be able to understand whether you have it or not. You communicate, we did it through social media, we had people, there's like local Facebook pages that weren't necessarily run by the municipality, but we knew people that were on there, and we asked them if they could post some information as well, but just basic, if you have any questions, come to town hall. We had brochures. We involved some of the faith-based organizations as well, just to disseminate information and just getting it out there. And there was also open, the different times we'd have specific meetings just for it, open to the public. But, if the finance committee was meeting, we didn't talk about anything else except for Prop 2.5, because you'd never be able to do business otherwise, because the whole focus will always come back to it, and the resentment that comes out of it. And so, yeah, it's an intensive process. I've learned a lot. And also, there's different methods. Obviously, whoever the successful person is, and I would hope that it would be me. I'd bring my experience in it to have learned what really works and what doesn't work.
Thank you.
HR,
Yes.
how would you, or how do you handle praise and discipline?
I'll take discipline first, because I think I don't call it discipline. I look at it as growth opportunities or corrective measures, right? Sometimes people do things not because it's either they don't have the skill, there's something happening in their lives, or they're ready to transition and they just don't want to be here. And so, what's causing this person not to do what they're supposed to be doing at their work and stuff like that. Some communities wait till evaluation time to do a lot of, well, you did this, you did it. I tend to, again, I do a lot of one-on-one meetings, and this may be because of my higher education background in developing people, that when it happens is when I typically, hey, you were supposed to, or this was supposed to happen, it didn't happen, these were some of the consequences, this was what, and we have that conversation, what's going on, how can I, the worst case scenario is putting someone, for me, on a work plan, where they have to start making progressive improvement, but I hope through coaching and mentorship, and also one-on-one meetings, that they are able to self-correct. Some people, again, based on those, may not be at a point that makes a big difference. Does that answer your question?
That's part one,
Okay, what was
praise.
praise? So I'm a mom. And so one of the things I learned early on, for every time I correct one of my children, I need to give them 10 levels of praise, right? To counteract that one negativity. So sometimes that comes into work. I tell and set expectations in the beginning with staff. Like, I'm not oh, you did a great job. Someone signs their names on a form that they're supposed to do, that's part of their job. I'm not gonna praise, that's your job, right? It's sort of like going above and beyond, and I compliment them at staff meetings. If someone goes above and beyond, I recognize them for it. I always work on, I'm at an interview now, so I have to use a lot of eyes, but ultimately it's us as a team that has done this, and we work together and collaboratively in working it, and I do a lot of collaborative efforts and make sure that people understand their worth and what they've done to get accomplished. You know, I always sort of, criticize behind closed doors, but praise them in public. And the other thing that I do relative to praise too is one of the things in all of the communities I've worked in, in any public setting, and I talked about it relative to a board, but also staff, like, I'll take the hit. You wanna blame somebody, blame me, but the department heads don't get blamed for anything, and so they don't get, their reputation doesn't get tainted, they get to save face and learn from their mistakes.
Do you believe in having a central grant writer or letting the individual departments pursue their own grants?
It depends. I think in a community like this, I have to do a lot of assessment and skill sets to see what department heads have the skill level. You can do it as a separate entity, and I think that would provide you an extra hand to do the writing, but you're still asking for the information from the department heads. If they have the skill set and they can put out grants in 2 or 3 minutes, then they can do it themselves. Police and fire typically do their own because theirs is very technical. But asking, well, town planners typically do a lot of grants as well, so they know how to do it. But asking, like, say, a conservation agent to write or do a grant may be more of a challenge, or someone in the finances. So yeah.
All right. Very good, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Time for questions.
Yeah, can I take one more HR lady? You sort of kind of got into this a little bit already, but have you ever worked in a community without an HR department, what's your, how do you approach that consistency, accountability amongst all the staff?
That I am HR.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Out of actually, this last community was the only community that I had a separate HR department. Every other one, I was HR. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
I didn't do the paychecks. People wouldn't get paid if I did payroll. But everything else, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Right. No other questions from the board?
No?
Any other follow-ups?
No, I think we should probably give time for questions, so I think we're up against time, so.
Did you have one more here?
I just have one more.
Okay, sure.
In Rutland, we have tried to strive to help our employees become more professional. How would you move that forward in developing a culture of professionalism to help move that forward?
I think I lead by example, but also expectation. And I sort of alluded to it earlier in regards to the community I was in. Like, people would hate it to come into town hall, and residents were yelling at staff were yelling at residents. There was one staff member that kicked out a resident because for what, was upset about something and said, "Get out of my office." I'm like, no, this is not your office. You're just taking space here. But changing that dynamic to being able to handle it and changing the culture, but also allowing residents want to be heard and the staff want to do their job. And so balancing those two aspects, I think, changes that dynamic and cultural, and also the respect piece, right? When someone starts, it's a process. I've done it. And the winning aspect of it, or the way that because you don't see the results of your work. Newspaper, someone who worked for the local paper said to me, people are trying to say there's low morale in town hall. And she said, this is the first time that I've ever walked through town hall and people were laughing. And so if people are laughing in town hall, it's a significant cultural change from people not wanting to go there. So it's doable. I've done it. And it takes some tenacity, but it's manageable and doable.
We just wanted to offer you the opportunity if there's any questions that you have for the board that you wanted to ask.
Okay, I think for me, in some of the research that I've done is you have a lot that's up in the air right now. What would be a priority if, you know, I'm the successful candidate, I'm here, you know, after week 2, you're like, all right, this is what you need to focus on. What would those, or that be?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think getting, you know, yourself into the town, getting intertwined into all the, what's happening right now, and then working on, I think one of the things that I struggle to see is a long-term plan. I think we are a very reactionary town, at least the way we've been kind of doing things. I think that that's, you know, partially because of not having a full-time town administrator. But also even before that, I think we had some places where we're still very reactionary. I think a lot of that comes down to where we are budgetary wise. So obviously it's hard to have a vision if you can't afford a vision. So I think we really need somebody to work with the select board, other town boards. The planner position right now is not filled. So I think, you know, getting somebody into that role and working with them on that goal as well to really figure out where we want to be as a community, and then figuring out what that means budgetarily wise, and what, you know, what budget we actually have to come up with for that, according to what the town can do and what the town wants. You know, I think we've definitely gone through phases of having that, and then I think in other times we don't have it. It just feels like it's kind of back and forth.
And I think to add to what Alex was saying, it's priorities, it always seems to revolve around the finances. You know, with being in a structural deficit, trying to find unique ways to save money, you know, hence some of the regionalization questions, you know, coming up with ideas on how we can share resources or trim things over here so that we can invest over here where it's necessary. So for me, it's coming up with ways to try and help with that, but also one of the other areas that we've kind of struggled is even adhering to our own financial policies where we're trying to, you know, set certain amounts of money away each year, you know, to our stabilization funds, not utilizing one-time funds for operating expenses. So how can we better stick to what we need to? And we're not, you know, with what you noted, requiring Prop 2.5s. We have not historically passed them. We did a couple of years ago. So just for me, it's getting us to a better financial footing is a priority, and if that comes with, you know, the hard decisions of trying to put forward a 2.5 override, just making sure that transparency is there, the need for it is there, and being able to communicate with residents about that need and the benefits or impact that not having one or having one would have.
Now, how much of a deficit are you in now? Are you starting to look at this coming budget?
3.5.
3.5? How receptive are you to restructuring and or reorganizing some departments and offices?
I'll speak for myself. I think that's something for a town administrator to come in and evaluate and see where needs are. For me, this board it's the town administrator is the CIO, the CFO, it's really, in my mind, it's the town administrator can come in and evaluate and make recommendations for where there could be efficiencies or improvements. That's, for me speaking personally from that side, so.
Yeah. Cause one of the things when I was talking about the 2.5 million was restructure, like we restructured when someone retired and we ended up getting 2 new positions for that same cost. And so it was easy, like there's different ways to look outside of that box and it's not a lost cause, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I, again, just to add to my own personal thoughts on that, I'm very much sometimes change is hard, but sometimes it's necessary, and using the excuse of, well, this is how we've always done it, to me, that type of mentality could use some revision.
Yeah,
We need, some new ideas and ways to make some change in the right direction.
Yeah, and the historical perspective is important.
Yes.
But, the other piece, I guess, in regards to it is that what are you looking for? I know you sort of talked a little about, you see the role of the town administrator in the absence of a charter and just a job description. What are you looking for your town administrator? And what direction do you foresee them moving forward? Because I'm looking for a long-term position, although my resume may question that aspect of it, but
So if there is a bylaw, a town administrator bylaw we passed a couple years ago at a town meeting. And the intent of passing that was to give the town administrator position a little bit more stability, and more clearly define the role. That piece is pretty much being moved into the charter. The charter is a work in progress. Ideally, it would go to town meeting in May, but depending on the timing of everything, it doesn't want to be a rushed process, but that's the kind of hope that it would. That piece is pretty much, from the bylaws, pretty much transitioning to the charter, to really try to empower, and in working with, the charter committees, working with the Collins Center for the charter work. And it's a stronger town administrator position. It empowers the town administrator to do a lot. The bylaw does, which is moving over. And I think that personally, I think that's been one of the challenges with town as a whole to fully embrace the town administrator role. As you probably know, it's a fairly new position to the town, and there's been a lot of turnover in that time. So I think I personally would love to have a long-term town administrator, because I think there's a lot of value to that historical knowledge piece that would come with it, the relationships that are built throughout all of that work, good and bad, right? Like, it's okay. And so I think a lot of it had been that there wasn't any teeth behind it, and the bylaw was a big step in having that happen. And then in a lot of conversations, a lot of town administrators, applicants have asked, do you have a bylaw or ideally a charter? We have the bylaw now, working on the charter.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah, it does, because the same way that I'm in the internet, Rutland is in the internet as well in regards to the town administrator turnover, and finding the right fit, is a two-way street as well.
For me, I guess, what I'm looking for is a town administrator who can fill the positions we lose, yet try to keep the educational wealth that we had. In other words, we lose a position. The position's been there for 10, 15 years. Not just filling it to get somebody in there, but filling it with somebody that has the capacity and knowledge to do that job. Because that's really part of what the town administrator's role is in this town, is fulfilling those positions. So I guess that's one. I guess I'm tired of seeing the wealth drain, the experience wealth drain in this town. And I want to try to get us back up to that.
So are you saying losing institutional knowledge, or actually having experienced people in those roles? Cause those are two different things.
I think both.
Okay.
In other words, who can I pick without them thinking we're trying to get rid of them, because we're not.
The fire chief, Rich.
Someone from an institutional standpoint who understands the bylaws, the mass general laws, the building codes and so forth, all that stuff, but also understands what Rutland is and how to apply that to Rutland. That wealth of experience is, I feel that that's what we've been losing and trying to get that back.
Okay.
And I'll just add really quickly, kind of tied to that, you know, we've had discussions again with the implementation of the TA bylaws and hiring of staff that can do these roles. You know, we've talked about, we're trying to professionalize the staff so that they are the ones that are doing the day-to-day that we trust to do their jobs. So the onus of the operation, you know, the day-to-day management and operation is for staff. Whereas this board is here just to be kind of the support of making sure that business takes place, that, you know, obviously we're the signatory for a lot of things, so, but that we're letting the professional staff that know the laws, that know how things operate, do their jobs, and then bring that forward to the board, so that we're kind of that communication path with the residents, keeping them there, so.
And then I guess if I still have time, Mr. Mobot, or timekeeper, is how would you either describe or categorize the residents and their involvement in municipal government or resistant to some things?
I think I can describe it in that we are a independent town. We have people that show up at town meetings. Lately, we've been doing well, trying to get people on committees and boards and that kind of stuff. But I think we have a certain sense of autonomy by individuals who wanna kind of let us do the job, and if they like it, they'll vote, if they don't, they won't.
Yes.
There's something wrong in that.
Yeah, I think for me, there's less involvement than I would like to see. You know, we have our town meetings, we get, what, on average, about 150 or so.
Always starts with 200 and then.
Right,
Dwindles
and then
down.
they
Yeah.
But considering that it's, you know, we're voting on business for a town of almost 10,000 people, you know, 150 people making those decisions, you know, and I don't know how much of it is because the people that are coming into town or that live here just aren't aware of their ability to be involved in those decisions, or just they don't want to be, which, you know, it is what it is. So I think we have a lot of great residents that are involved with the committees, and to Harry's point, we've seen some new faces coming in, which I think is great. But I think we definitely, it would be great to, you know, continue that outreach to make sure that we're saying, hey, there's opportunities here. But at the same time, just reflecting the commitment to it. You know, not everybody's got busy lives, so it's, you know, it's a give and take, and, you know, sometimes being involved in your town is, you know, you just don't have the time for it based on everything else, so. But I think we are seeing more involvement, but I would like to see more personally, in any ways that we can continue that outreach.
Maybe the town sees how much fun it is to go into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, those are, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, we truly appreciate you coming out and your
Thank
time
you.
this evening.
It's a pleasure meeting you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
very
coming.
much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you so much, it's nice meeting you.
Great night.
Thank you very much,
Good night, have a safe drive.
Do we have any other discussion?
No other
can't.
discussion tonight, so we'll
I'll make a
convene
motion to.
tomorrow, and then we can deliberate post.
Second.
So, motion to adjourn, we have a second, we are adjourned at 8:24 this evening.
What would I?
Oh.